This week on Waxing the Porpoise, G-Baby and the usual suspect Steve go full Bananarama as we ride along the moonlit avenues of an 8-bit 80s synth nostalgia diet horror mystery trip where curiosity dances with danger to break down RKSS 2018 Jug, Summer of '84. Join us as we got to install microwave ovens, chastise our lead Davey on his uninspired PB&J game, and take the Nestea Plunge into a time where walkie-talkies were the ultimate spy gadget and friendship was forged in the fires of adventure and ripping on one another mercilessly. Where a cruel summer, kids on bikes, and all things analog reign supreme, the undercurrent of danger and the unknown belie this carefree suburban milieu, glistening with the veneer of innocence. The porpoises, midnight companions and keen observers at the vanguard of the nostalgic labyrinth guide us, their sleek forms cutting through the darkness like shadows in motion. Bikes! Let's wax this on bikes porpoise.
Chase, don't do that.
You see, we working on his brow chakra. We're just back in the crown chakra.
There's a serial killer on the loose. What else could possibly be this exciting? Incoming titties.
All right, welcome back to Waxing the Porpoise. We are back again here on episode 65 now, gathered to discuss Summer of '84 from 2018. This evening, you got myself, Jim G-Baby.
My friends and I just had a run-in with these really disgusting people. You might have heard of them, the Fratellis.
And, of course, we have the usual suspect, Steve, a.k.a. the Wizard of Oz. How's it going, man?
Doing fantastic, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing good. I can't remember. Have you still not seen The Goonies? Is that one
No,
you've never
I've seen it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen that one a bunch.
Okay. I wasn't sure yet because between like the oddballs that you have actually seen and the times that you fucked with me and said, "Oh yeah, I've seen it." No, I haven't. I couldn't remember if that was one of those. So cool, because this flick actually we're going to talk about has a lot of parallels to Goonies, and I was hoping that you had seen it and we could rap about that. But those were a couple lines I pulled from Goonies that are my favorite. When Chunk is like on the side of the road and he's like, "Hey, help me." And then he turns on the light and he's like, "Oh fuck." And he starts singing that Italian shit.
Yeah, I didn't even really make the connection to the Goonies, but this movie does have a serious Goonies feel to it that I never thought of. My initial thought was it's got a very heavy Stranger Things vibe mixed with like a more modern, less shitty version of the Burbs. But I didn't add in the Goonies angle. So
yeah, that's touche, because I didn't think about the Burbs, but I can definitely feel that influence and that vibe too. But yeah, right away I was like, I've seen this before, but this time it jumped out at me. I was like, oh dude, this is Goonies, like light. And I have a little quick breakdown on like the equivalencies and the parallels. I was like, dude, it is there. And there's a couple other things that they pay homage to. And I think one of the strengths of this flick is that they do it. There's a couple points where they do it like real in your face, like right on the fucking nose. But I think the majority of the shit that they pay homage to in this 80s nostalgia thing that they have going is done like pretty well, like well done, clever, and like not trying to wink at you like, whoa, see, this is from this. Yeah. So you'd never seen it. Had you heard about this or ever seen a preview for this, or was this just total blind
completely
walking into this?
Off my radar, so much so that I kept even forgetting the name of it. Like when I went to go look it up to actually watch it, I had to go back to our text. What's that movie called? And even like halfway through the movie, I had completely forgotten the name of it. So much so that in my mind I was like, the hell year is this supposed to be taking place? Is this like late 80s, early 90s? And then, they show the Reagan 84 sign. I was like, oh, yeah, it must be 84. And then I remember, oh, yeah, that's the name of the movie.
It's in the fucking title.
Pretty quick on
They
the
were
update.
Combs!
So this was directed in 2018. This is the follow-up from. So this is another one of those that I've started to notice more and more, like these collectives of directors. So it's not just one director. This is like a trio, and they call themselves RKSS, which is an initialism for Roadkill Superstars. Like they're a band or something, similar to the new Screams, Scream 5 and Scream 6 are done by what is it, Radio Silence? That's like a 2 or 3 person producing, writing, directing team that share a credit. I think in number 6 they broke that up a little bit, and they didn't.
It's got to be a tough arrangement.
Yeah, I was thinking about like financially, like how do you split everything 3 ways as a director, like, or do you work something out like custom when you're negotiating, like with the studio, or
even just creatively, if you have 3 different people, how long is that going to take if you have 3 different visions of every scene? Or I don't know. They must have figured out a way to make it work, but.
Yeah, they must be pretty simpatico to be able to create something like that, like maybe one dude, like they just know, okay, you're more of like the sound guy and aesthetic, and you're like the more, storyline, and then you're the more visual, maybe. I don't know.
Well, if you think about it like
interesting.
Like a band, if you've got one guy who's the crazy control freak, egomaniac, and everybody else is just kind of like a musician that's like, yeah, that's cool, whatever you want to do, that can work. But if you have 2 or 3 guys who are all the egomaniac control freaks, that's not going to work.
No. You got 3 Jimmies. I keep coming back to the herdsman.
Wonders.
Got it. So the 3 people, they're a Canadian group. It's Francois Simard, Anouk Whistle, and Joanne Carl Whistle. They're known for, I don't know if you've ever seen this or heard about it. They did Turbo Kid. The 2 of them are.
Okay.
I think it's 2 dudes and a gal, and I can't remember which is which, like who's brother and sister, if it's 2 brothers, but they did they shot to their claim to fame is they worked on Turbo Kid, which was like, I think it was like an indie, didn't go to theaters. I think Netflix scooped it up, so it's like a Netflix original or exclusive. It's pretty fun. It's got Michael Ironside in it. It's very synth heavy like this, and it takes place in a different time and age, and it's super gory. Like it's almost kind of like a Mad Maxy, but like teenage bubblegum pop, but it still retains like a fuck ton of gore. So it's kind of a fun movie. I liked it a lot. So when I heard that this was their next project, like an 80s kind of nostalgia trip, like horror mystery kind of thing, I was pretty psyched for it. So this is like hot off the heels of like Stranger Things season 2-ish, I think, was about the time this was released. So they were definitely riding a wave of of that kind of stuff. Have you seen any of the Stranger Things at this point now?
Yeah.
Or did you try watching season 1 and you gave up?
No, we watched all of, I think, season 1 and 2, and I think there might have been a longer break between 2 and 3.
There was.
Okay, and then I just kind of fell off, never got back on. I heard a lot about things that happened that season, like main people who died. So that took a little bit of the desire away to watch it, and just never really got back into it. I hear they're great. I'm sure they're great, but
yeah. I would say if you can, I think season 2 gets the most, I won't say hate, but people like it the least. is kind of the consensus I've seen. So I really like season 2 because it leans heavy into the Halloween time with all the pumpkins and shit and the upside down. Like I liked that. So I would say if you were even just okay with season 2, season 3 really like brings it. And it's a lot of fun. It's a really fun summertime watch. Three takes place during the summer. So it's very like, if you like to watch it in the season and get in to that kind of vibe, I'd definitely recommend it. And season 4 was pretty awesome too. So, this is very similar. I mean, a lot of the synth cues and like, it's like this, subgenre. I don't know if Bob from Straight Chilling coined it, but I've heard him mention it a lot. Kids on bikes, subgenre. This is a kids on bikes movie. Like you think of like E.T. and Stranger Things. This, I like that kind of aesthetic. It takes me back to a more innocent time, as it were. And these guys getting into shit, like Goonies too, is definitely kids on bikes movie.
Like a Stand By Me, Sandlot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Sandlot even you could call Kids on Bikes. Even though I think the Kids on Bikes subgenre, it's got like an edge of like thriller or mystery going on, but I think you could lump other stuff in there like that's more carefree, like Sandlot. I could definitely see that being grouped in here, but is that kind of a turnoff thing to you, or did this help you enjoy this more, that kind of this milieu?
No, it didn't take anything away from it for me. I mean, I try to keep my expectations low and try to look at these movies positively first before I go in with like the cynical asshole hat. And
innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah. So I mean, pretty early on, you could tell like, wow, this is very, very heavy Stranger Things influence, and that's fine. I mean,
yeah.
And it was a fun movie. I liked it a lot. I liked that it was dark. I liked that the ending wasn't necessarily happy and all wrapped up tight. A little bummed that there's not a sequel, because I feel like that would be ripe for just, this kid looking over his shoulder the entire movie, waiting to find this guy coming after him. And great villain. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, he's a fucking creep, man.
I mean, it's just a fun movie. Like, I don't really get how somebody could be really critical of it. Now, that being said, I did find 3 bad reviews that they're just so good that I had to pull all 3. And there's a common theme throughout them that just makes me laugh. So if you don't mind, I figured we would do 1 now and then 1 maybe like halfway through and then 1 at the end.
Sure. And, fire.
And I think it could kind of lead into, I mean, I related to these kids quite a bit. Like, I was a little 15-year-old shithead dude, like making fun of your friends, talking about their moms, and just kind of getting into mischief. So none of that really struck me as unbelievable. But
before we get into this, can I guess real quick who your favorite kid is in the group?
I mean, you already know.
Eats?
Who it is. Oh yeah.
Eats, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's awesome. I like him the most too. I like Woody a lot because I identify with his character being the jolly fat guy, the foil to everyone else. But yeah, Eats is definitely the highlight in the group for sure. I was like, this is either Steve or he likes this guy a lot. He reminds me of the kid from Scout's Guide, the fucking the horn dog.
Yeah. I mean.
It's right.
That was like
the same cloth.
That was pretty much every kid I hung out with when I was a teenager. All right, so the first bad review is from Sarah. She gave it a 1 out of 5 stars, and the title of her review is simply distasteful. And so what she says is, even if it's 1984, as a 2018 film, you don't have to glorify teenage boys nonstop talking about sex and masturbation while objectifying women. Not scary, not a horror movie, not like Stranger Things, not nostalgic. Distasteful use of the R word and slow, predictable plot. If it's your second movie of the night, you might enjoy it. Wow. Thanks, Sarah.
If it's... I disagree on multiple fronts, but even the very end, it's okay if it's the second movie you watch at night. What does that mean?
PC load letter.
What the
Yeah.
fuck? Yeah, the beginning statement, it's like that's what 12 to 16-year-old boys are like.
Yeah.
This is very accurate.
Yes.
Right or wrong, it's like deal with it.
Young boys are absolute animals.
Yeah. That's a constant.
Yeah, there's a reason why
the shape of things will change, but the archetype, I feel like, will always maintain.
The stereotype or the trope of the overprotective dad in movies who's looking at the boyfriend like, I know what you're thinking. It's like, well, yes, absolutely.
Why do you know?
Yes, because we are all sick, disgusting kids at one point. So.
Yeah. That's why I was like, I fucking pray to God I don't have daughters or girls.
I couldn't. I would go to jail immediately. I would have to put myself in jail just voluntarily for the safety of the neighborhood boys.
Just pull what's that guy's name? Gary Rouch, the guy in the phone bank. What the fuck's his name?
Gary Plouch, I think.
Rouch. Rouse.
I love when he shoots the guy who molested his kid. That one cop's like, "Why, Gary?" It's like, you know why this guy molested my son violently and kidnapped him.
Yeah, and killed him.
And
duh.
Did the kid die? I don't think the kid died.
Oh, he didn't?
I
thought I'll have to look into it. I just had it in my head that you told me that he had abducted, molested, and killed his 11-year-old son.
Maybe for some reason I'm thinking that.
Either way,
yeah, I mean, it really doesn't change.
I would have done the same thing. He just happened to catch like a moment in time where he could actually pull that off. Like, I feel like if you'd have to go about that a different way this day and age. Yeah,
it'd be tough. I mean, even though public sentiment would most likely be on your side, they're not just going to give you probation. They'll knock it down from murder to manslaughter, but you're still going away.
No, yeah, I meant more like the technical aspect of like getting into that.
Bringing a handgun into an airport? Yeah, that would be a little more tougher.
Yeah, finding that perfect window of bringing a fucking in the post 9/11 world, but yeah, fuck that review. This movie's awesome. Yeah, I thought the nostalgia level was balanced. Like I said, I don't think they winked too much at the audience, because some of the things I caught, and then later when I went and saw some trivia in the background, I was like, oh shit, I had no idea that, like, for instance, when they're playing, like, what they're on kids on bikes, they're riding their bikes along to Ipswich Lanes, their local hangout, the fucking bowling alley, and you got the Bananarama Cruel Summer fucking banger bumping. That's like a shot from where in Karate Kid, Daniel, it's in a very similar fashion. He's riding his bike to, I don't know where the fuck he's going, but Bananarama's playing. So it's like that's just a little thing that they pulled from that, or they're paying homage to, but it's kind of a blink and you miss it kind of thing.
Never seen.
You never seen Karate Kid?
Nope.
It's good. I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, it's Karate Kid, you got to watch it. It's fine. Yeah. Dude, I remember we used to have a coworker in the summertime. He's like, put that fucking Bananarama on, Cruel Summer. It was Ratliff.
Oh, yeah.
He loved that fucking song, too. He'd start getting down. Yeah, I love that song. So I guess right out of the gate, I thought it would be fun to, like, set this up like how it's like Goonies and all the parallels. Yeah. So So we have the 80s nostalgia. It's also like I got a Disturbia vibe. I don't know if you've ever seen Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf. I think it's from like 2008.
No, I have not.
He's spying on like a neighbor who's like into some shit. It's definitely got like that kind of vibe to it without, it's not lifting anything wholesale off that, but just kind of a nod to that. Awesome fucking synth soundtrack. So the Goonie parallel right away, I was like, okay, so you got Davey. He's our main kid. He's like the lead straight man, but he's kind of a dreamer. He's got a lofty thing similar to, or a plan or something similar to Mikey with the fucking buried treasure and One-Eyed Willie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So then you got Faraday, who's our resident geek, nerd, gadget type person. That's Data.
Wow. Yeah,
and Faraday's a call out to, I think I can't remember I didn't look up the scientist. I think there's a famous scientist called Faraday, something Faraday. There's like a Faraday cage is something that he made. Then you have Eats, obviously his mouth.
Well, I think
Corey
we talked
Feldman's.
about the Faraday bag during the Murdoch case, because that's the type of bag you can put a phone in that'll cut off.
Oh yeah, it does shit to like signal and like has those kinds of properties.
It prevents remote access to the phone, so data can't be manipulated. I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I knew it was something like that, like a Faraday cage or whatever. It does something to block. I think that's the shit they put in like those RFID blockers, like those wallets, those hard wallets you can buy now, so people can't like fucking hack your shit, or like those like card skimmers.
Yeah, that
kind of shit. Anyway, so then we got Eats. Obviously, that was the easiest one to jump out. That's Mouth.
Yeah.
A fast talker, smart ass, maybe a broken home situation, horn dog. I guess that one's not too on the nose, but with Mouth, Corey Feldman's character, but it's like that's the most similar one in their group of four.
I feel like so far these are all pretty on the nose.
And then obviously then you got Woody and Chunk.
Wow.
Yeah, fat kid, comedic relief, jolly giant. They kind of poke fun at him, but he's like a solid part of the crew.
You've got the older gal love interest.
Yep. What's her name? Nikki. The fuck is her name? She's got a dope name too, of course. Nikki Kashuba. That's like, I guess there's a real. I know. Like in Goonies, like Mikey's like just like, I think he likes Carrie. What is her name? Carrie Green. The redhead from Goonies. I think he's kind of smitten with her a little bit, but it's not really overt.
Oh, you know what? You're right. It was the older brother who was into the girl.
Yeah, right? It was Josh Brolin that had the hots for her. So that one's not like, doesn't line up perfectly, but this is kind of one of those things in like an 80s, like teenage kind of like there's like this like ideal on a pedestal, like cool. She's not only hot, but she's super cool. She's a fucking DJ at the bowling alley roller skater rink. She's super like a badass chick, you know, like she's like the ideal for these kids. They just, all of them are infatuated with her. They drool over her. I feel like that's an 80s trope. Yeah, exactly.
Oiling. So
I can't take it no more. So yeah, that right away. And then obviously too, like the overarching plot, you know, you have like Davey's super into like conspiracy, and like his dad's a cameraman, and I think they even dropped like Nikki like used to babysit this kid and like gave him like, you know, like the Weekly World News or something, like started him off on that path. So he's very like investigative minded. He wants to be like a videographer. And then in this time and place, we're in June 1984 in Ipswich, Oregon. There's been like, I think 13 missing kids. They haven't found, and so that's kind of brewing in the background too, and so he's cognizant of this. So this is his like One-Eyed Willie, you know. That's the parallel I saw right there with Goonies. I was like, oh damn, that's crazy how they, because it doesn't really come at you like this. I noticed this like this is probably my fifth watch I've seen of this flick, and this time I was like, oh man, I really like how they did that without like bastardizing it,
Yeah.
you know, or like winking too hard at you about it.
Because I didn't pick up on it at all. And yeah, you could see like an example of something they might do would be like, you and your goony friends need to get out here, you know, like really just put it right in your face, like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm glad they didn't use the actual fucking word goonie, but
Chester Copperpot.
yeah, and then you got Mackie, who is kind of like the stand-in for the Fratellis, I guess, is like, but it's different because he's the end game. He's the treasure. He's not the thing that's pit against the Goonie kids. But I guess I'll get off the Goonie kick. I just thought that like if you frame it up, it's like all the archetypes are there.
Sure. Yeah.
And this kind of thing. And I liked that about this, but so yeah, we have like, there's all these missing kids. Davey's onto it. I will say, I really like this flick a lot, but I do have a couple problems, and I think this time it really stuck out because I think the first couple of times I watched it, I was just enamored with the aesthetic and like just kind of going along for the ride. This time, the biggest problem that I feel like would have elevated this movie to make it like fucking S tier is Davey is way too fucking smug. And there's multiple points where he's like winking at the fucking camera, and like it totally, it would have been a much better movie if he were more strong. Like, when they first, like, he unveils the plan and he's like, okay, I think Mackie is the Cape May Slayer. He's behind all these abductions. He's killing kids, this and that. And he gets his crew, his treehouse crew, to buy in, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to stake him out. So they start this stakeout, and they track him on the weekdays, and like, this is where he is in the morning, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of that little montage, I think Woody's like, now that we know his schedule, what do we do now? And then this part jumped out at me. He fucking like smiles. He looks, Davey's like real like sure of himself and like ego full on. He's like, we catch this fucker and become heroes. I'm like, you would not be like that in this situation. You'd be shitting bricks, like seeing all these little things stacking up to your like, oh fuck, he really might be the guy. You wouldn't. And he does this multiple points where I feel like, because they're going for realism here. This isn't supernatural. Like, this isn't like a big popcorn movie. I feel like they're going for realism as much as you can in this situation. And those things just like really like how happy he is at these points where it's like, no, it's like, you're getting deeper and deeper into this. You're not going to be like shooting glances at like the hot chick and smiling and be like, oh yeah, no, we'll be fine. Like, he just seems way too sure of himself. And I didn't like that this time. And I feel like it would have been a better movie if he wasn't so fucking smug. Did you pick up on any of that at all this watch?
No, not to the point where it bugged me, but I think I did go into this with a certain amount of like corny allowance. You know, I was sort of expecting a little bit of schlock, so it definitely didn't jump out to me anyway, to a point of like, oh come on, what are we doing? The only part where I was like, no fucking way, was when they tell Davey's parents what's going on, that Mackie's the guy, and they're like, no, we're going to go over there and you're going to apologize. If that's me, I'm like, no fucking way am I going over there to apologize to this guy under any circumstance.
They should have
telling you
more.
Yeah, this guy murdered children. I'm not going to. Sorry.
Yeah, they should have put way more of a fight to that. Like, dude, no. Yeah, he was just like, okay, and they mosey on over there, and I maybe that's more plot development and like story to like keep it going that they had to do that, or they just, yeah, I didn't really buy that either too. One of the funny, I meant to make a sound bump of it, but Eats, like his part in the montage when he's staking out, he's like, Mackie gets home after Mackie gets home. He has dinner at 8:35 every night. and then he goes on a jog, and then he probably wanks it and cries himself to sleep.
Yeah.
Loser. Like,
Yeah. There's some funny dialogue in this.
Yeah.
I know
They're always bagging on.
I know it disturbed Sarah, our first reviewer, that the R word was used, but there was like some funny, like that's how young teenage boys talk. So.
Especially in 1984.
Yeah.
Like dropping that and like, you know, the F word, the other word, you know, like it's like, and saying like, oh, that's gay and like stuff like this. It's like that was part of the time there in this time capsule that we're going over. So, yeah. So the Mackie character right away, this guy's got something. He's got like a look about him. And, what do you think about this? Like, I mean, at the beginning they kind of present it and they're steering you towards him. Did you think that he was going to be a red herring the whole time, or were you more like, oh, it's got to be this guy because they're focusing so much on him and you're just going to see how it plays out?
Yeah, I kind of thought they were going to go the red herring route, as you call it, because they were laying it on so heavy so early, and he just seemed really creepy, and every interaction he had was bizarre. And then when he's sitting on the front lawn drinking beer, watching the kids play, that's nuts. And then, yeah, when he dials his own house, that was a pretty. I mean, that I don't know if that would be the final like nail in the coffin of like, okay, there's no way this guy isn't doing it if this is what he's doing.
Right. Yeah, I think a smart thing that this film does or did is they don't wrap it up nicely, because they could have in like that late third act. I mean, they could have stopped it like, okay, yeah, they're gonna catch him, and then they tie it up. You know, he was found, you know, 100 miles from the state line, and they got him, or they could have put a bow on it right there. But then you're like, oh fuck, where's this going? You know, like it's showing them sleeping in the house, and then you see the fucking attic stairs come down super slow, and he's coming down. I'm like, oh fuck, I really liked that. Like,
that was a great shot, like probably one of the best parts of the whole movie. And I was watching it with the missus, and as soon as you saw the thing came down, she had like the over the top Jim, like,
oh shit,
yeah. And I mean, another good one was when he's looking at Mackie he's looking over at his house.
Oh fuck, the window.
Yeah. Ooh. Creepy.
And not only that, this time I never clocked it before, but this time I did, and he even Dave even says it. So he's using his binocs and he's like looking over at Mackie's house and shit, and they had just planted like a fucking G.I. Joe radio and taped the thing down so they could have a constant hear the audio. So they're trying to eavesdrop on him using a fucking little shitty 2-way radio. And so he's looking over at the house, and he pans over, and then Mackie's like fucking right there, boom, with binocs staring right back at him.
Yeah.
And he drops. Did you notice too, like when he goes back up to look a second time, Mackie had taken that radio and he puts it right on top.
I was wondering what that was. Yeah, I was kind of thinking that might be that.
Because Davey says it too. He's like, fuck. He gets on his other radios to his treehouse crew and is like, dude, I'm fucked, blah, blah, blah. He's like, he even put the radio right in the windowsill. He wanted me to see it. I didn't pick that up the first few times I watched it. He does. He says that. I was like, yeah. Huh. If you go back, so I was like, ew, that's even creepier, because he's like, he wants you to fucking know, like, I'm on to you guys. And one thing I didn't pick up at all, this was like through the trivia, it's when he goes over and talks to Mac, he's like, oh, hey, sorry, yeah, like we were playing Manhunt. I didn't expect to see you there. He's like, hey, he's like, yeah, I noticed those radios you guys got are pretty, you know, pretty weak, you know, like, he's like, I got some old police radios. If you ever want to use them, you can have them. He's like, they pick up anything. And the trivia was like, this implies that Mackie was onto these kids being onto him for way longer than you might think, like talking about everything, which is maybe why he was more of a step ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, because I mean, we we would mess around with walkie-talkies as kids, and you would routinely pick up other people, and they weren't super fancy walkie-talkies that had a bunch of different channels you could switch to. It was like A or B or 1 or 2, and we would pick up wild shit, and it was awesome. It was like half the fun of having walkie-talkies is talk to each other. But yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, this guy's a cop. He could easily be picking up, because he sees these kids with walkie-talkies all the time. So that's interesting.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, back to that, the ice cream part, though. That part fucking freaks me out. How he's just sitting there sipping a beer. He's like, "Hey, kids, do you want a Freezy Pop?"
Oh,
and they're like, "Yeah," and they all line up, and then he stops. He has that cold fucking like 1,000-yard stare, and and they zoom in up on him real creepy. It's like, that's, I don't know if that's just what people did in the 80s, like they'd sit out in their front lawn, but just the fact that he was out there having a beer, just watching these kids play. I mean, you think about that this day and age, be like, "Oh, what's that fucking creep doing?" And if he wasn't a serial killer, it's just like, "Oh, he's just, hanging out in his yard, with the kids, watching them and stuff." But I don't know, that part, and the music, that weird kind of synth, that drony thing. I was like, "Oh, fuck, this guy's such a creep, man."
Have you seen Game Night? I can't remember if this has come up before.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last couple episodes.
Okay, yeah. Creepy neighbor, Jesse Plemons, the cop. I kept thinking about. It's so good.
Man, I'm due for a revisit on that. But yeah, he's so good. What, doesn't he have like a cat that he's always got? And he's like,
it's like a little dog, little rat dog,
Mr. Evil style. Yeah. He's a fucking creep too. I know he played a creep on Breaking Bad. I haven't seen that entire series, but I've seen some snippets of him where he's fucking super sociopath. So back to this flick, summer of '84. God damn, dude, people are setting up fireworks, like big ass ones, dude. It's crazy. That just fucking freaked me out.
Yeah, it's not even the 4th of July yet. As we record.
Yeah, people out here, they started probably 3 or 4 nights ago, just like some random, like pop, pop, pop. Last night there were big ones, like fucking boom, like I think people light them off here until like the 12th or the 13th. Wow. It'd be like, is it 4th of July? Like, yeah, it's wild. Out here they have like full on brick and mortar year-round open phantom fireworks. Like, they have shopping carts and shit. Like, people don't fuck around like when it's legal year-round. So the main plot is these kids are specifically Davey are zeroed in on this Mackey guy who also happens to be a cop in probably a smaller Oregon town. I didn't look up if this was a real town or if it was fictitious. Did you look up any of this, or like Cape May? I liked the setting too. Kind of reminded me of like a coastal little Portland or like Oregon town. I kind of like that aesthetic. Yep. Yeah, because they were in Astoria. So yeah, that's another parallel too. And then I say that one of the big things that starts them off too is that this killer, who we don't know yet is Mackey, pulls a Zodiac and like puts something in to the cops and, claims responsibility. And not only was it 13 kids, and 2 adults. So 15 victims total. And I think in the background on the TV, you can hear him say that he provided details only that the police were privy to. So they know it's legit. And so the police have to come out and say, yeah, we have a serial killer on our hands, yada, yada, yada. So then they start, they stake out Mackey. I loved that they go into a library. We have a microfiche scene going through newspapers. I love that shit. And then also like another through line that they play this game. It's basically hide and seek with flashlights, but they call it manhunt, so it sounds dope. Is this like, I wonder if they made this up for the film, or is this something that you were familiar with? Did you play this when you were a kid?
We didn't call it manhunt, but yeah, we would play versions of this type of game, which would it would either be considered like hide and seek, or it was more like it was more similar to capture the flag without actually capturing the flag. So, like for example, we would go to a high school in the middle of the night, and like one group would be sort of in the middle, and the other group would have to get from one side to the other without getting caught. So it wasn't really like hide and seek or capture the flag, but it was kind of a weird hybrid of that.
Hybrid.
And we also, I mean, the library scene definitely took me back because, being little shitty kids, we spent a lot of time in cemeteries for whatever reason. Like you could just hop the fence and walk around at night, and it was like kind of creepy but cool. And I still remember there was one particular night we were all hanging out there, probably drinking or whatever, smoking cigs, and we started noticing in this particular cemetery, a lot of the headstones had these weird symbols on them, which we later found out were Freemason symbols. And so it was like the first time as young teenagers we discovered what that was. We're like, what the fuck is this like weird compass and ruler and the eye? And then once you notice it, you start to see it everywhere. And so we literally had a library that was down the street from that cemetery, and we went there and we're like, what the fuck? It was like the first real sort of entree
getting into like Illuminati and like the Priory of Sion and all that kind of shit.
Yeah, it was weird. Like the first time you ever come across something like that, and you're researching it at the library, it's like, this is so bizarre. And yeah, it was fun though.
I like how I like how they, in this too, they kind of show like during that time, it probably seems like fucking 100 years ago, but what, like when they were looking up like when the Woody notices when they see his storage unit, and he's like, I saw that they had these bags of, it was like NaOH, and then the nerd's like, it's not Noah, it's fucking what is it, sodium hydroxide?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, sodium hydroxide. And then they go and he's like, what the fuck is that? And then they have to pull out a world book, like encyclopedia, and they break it down and they look at it and they see, oh shit, it's like used to like mask the odor of like decaying, decomposing bodies, and it breaks down flesh and all this shit. Like I really like that part. Like just showing kind of like how analog things were. Yeah, that's crazy. I remember when I was a kid, I liked that aesthetic, like, thinking about like punks just like trying to like do something to kind of skeeve you out a little bit, going through like a cemetery sounds like a lot of fun at that age. But there was this old, where I grew up in Turlock, there was this old hospital. They had built a new one, but the old one still remained. It had like asbestos in it and fucking bombs and like crazy shit. It was called Emmanuel Hospital, and this was old Emmanuel. So every once in a while we'd get up the gumption. We wouldn't go without someone's older brother. Like, oh, Daniel, he's been there before. He would be like our fucking spirit guide, like our shaman, and he'd bring like a big Bowie knife, and we'd have like a backpack of mag lights, and like we'd just go in and like look around, and you hear other stories, and like they kind of turn into like urban legend, like, oh, this kid fucking like a bum jumped out at him, and like, that kind of stuff. But then we also played a game similar to Manhunt. It was, I don't know, we called it Bloody Murder. And so it's kind of like that hybrid, like get from one side to the other or capture the flag, and you had flashlights. I had a buddy that lived out in the country, and he had this huge spread and all kinds of like different like structures and trees, and like it was like basically it turned into an obstacle course for us, and you had to hunt down the other people, and the goal was to try to come up on them, and you just scream as loud as you could and try to freak the fuck out of them. So it's like scream bloody murder. So yeah, dude, I remember being like 14 and that being like fucking so cool. You stay up till like 2 a.m, and like so the manhunt in this definitely gave me a huge nostalgia rush too. I really like that. Or like the part where they're trying to come up on Mackie and trying to eavesdrop, and that one little shit finds Woody, who's propping up Davey up there, and he's like, "I got you, you big titty butthole."
Yeah.
Woody's like, "No, I was on timeout. Get the fuck out of here before I pound you." Like,
Yeah.
it was awesome. Another line Woody says too. He's like, "Fuck, if there's dead bodies in here, I'm totally gonna shit my Calvins." I was like, "Wait, what the fuck are Calvins?" I was like, "Oh, Calvin Klein underwear. I'm gonna shit my pants." Okay. Yeah, that was funny. Oh, so homage real quick to Star Wars. Woody says, "I've got a bad feeling about this," around like the halfway point when they're going into their friend Sammy's house, who they think is like has been abducted.
Oh yeah.
And it turns out they went to their lake house, but they're like, "Why is their car still here?" And I guess they had an RV or something that they borrowed, but they thought for sure. That one had a couple of jump scares that I really liked when they went in there, and I can't remember what the first one was. But
when
the second one
when her hand comes around,
yeah,
the wall,
that one, yeah, I was like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
Those two got me real good. Were you gonna say something before I got a bad feeling about this?
Oh, I was going to ask you. I'm sure you saw. It was the only piece of trivia that I wrote down, but shit, I just lost it. So when Woody steals his mom's car, one of the other kids is like, "You'll be fine. You look 30."
Yeah.
So,
motherfucker was like 25.
Yeah. He was 25 in real life, so they were taking a little jab at him.
Dude,
25. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, that's like...
I'm 25, dickhead, and that's a chop.
When I saw that, I was like, that's so weird, because I buy this kid dead to rights just being a huge 15, 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. I guess it's just like the baby face, on him. Like, all these kids I totally bought. I didn't look up the other ages. I think the other kids are closer to that. But, yeah, that one jumped out. I was like, dude, he is fucking 30. Jesus Christ. I like to, I guess it makes sense because I feel like if I would be the Woody in that kind of friend group. And for each of them, I feel like they maybe Faraday's like the least developed, but I feel like you get a good idea of who each of these kids are, and you get a little sliver, like with Woody, like you can see his mom is like a nurse or something. She's worked to the bone, and like she's got a bottle of booze on the table, and she comes home from like, I think he says she was on another like 36-hour shift, and she goes to sleep on the couch, and he fucking has a tender moment where he like covers her up and says, "I love you, Mom." And like you can see on his face like it's like wearing on him that he's got to like almost help take care of his mom. Looks like there's no dad in the picture. And then Eats comes from a broken home. He talks about, like his parents fighting, all this and that. His dad wants to tear down their treehouse. He's got a fucking asshole 20-year-old older brother who they like slip in, and he calls him a fag. He's like, "Well, you need a ride to the bus stop or something." And he flips him off and he peels out. So, and then Davey, you see like his interactions. He's kind of like left to his own devices. I feel like they did with such a short runtime. I feel like you got a good idea of who each of these kids kind of were, and they weren't just cardboard cutouts. So
yeah,
I think the film did a good job with that.
Yeah, I would agree.
I guess and earlier in this flick too, that there's a bunch of things that start adding up for Davey, but one too that we didn't talk about is pretty early on, Davey notices a kid inside Mackie's house, and he's got like a distinctive like MTV, like an old school MTV t-shirt on, and he notices him inside Mackie's house helping him do something. Later on, it comes back around when he's fucking eating this PB&J, his dainty ass PB&J. I was like, Jesus Christ, put some peanut butter on that fucking thing.
Yeah,
that irritated the shit out of me. It's like, if you're gonna have PB&J, you gotta go fucking big, extra jelly.
Yes, that was discussed in our house as well. I feel like it needed more peanut butter and jelly. And yeah.
And he didn't dip it into his milk, but
I'm not a milk guy.
milk and PB. See, I found out the hard way later on. I thought that was like a shared experience. I think I shared this with a bunch of you guys. I used to do PB&Js on sourdough, and I would dip it into. I'd have to have a full ass ice cold glass of milk, and I would dip every bite and eat it that way, kind of like milk and cookies. And you guys were all like, "No, people don't do that. You're weird."
Yeah, I mean, you're weird for other reasons, but
Yeah.
So PB&J on sourdough, I would allow if the sourdough was toasted. If it's cold, then I don't. Yeah, I can't abide that. I'm sorry. Sorry.
See, I grew up in a household where my mom was like, when it came to bread, it was like sourdough or nothing. So I had to do what I had to do to have a PB&J, you know. So
yeah,
and that was all I had ever eaten. So I didn't really think two ways about it. But yeah, Davey definitely is eating the weakest PB&J I've ever seen. But when he has his milk, you see the kid that he saw earlier is like Dusty DeWitt. And he's got a distinctive kind of like 80s fro thing going on. And he's on the like the kids on the milk carton thing that used to be a big, like that jumped out to me too. Like, whoa, like they used to, like, that's how analog things were. They'd be like, have you seen this child or missing, you know, and they'd be on the back of the fucking milk carton. I think there's some kind of a story about that too. Like how that originated. But anyway, but like starting to put that shit on milk cartons because everyone was around the table, and like that's something that's kind of gone away too, like when you having breakfast in the morning. But
yeah, I think
he notices that.
He was a kid in New York. I think that was the first one they put on milk cartons. But I know you're familiar with the Johnny Gosh case.
Oh yeah,
this kind of made me think of that. I don't know if it's because it's that same time frame or if there's a milk carton angle to that too, but yeah, that came to mind. And then my second thought was, I bet you Jim is thinking the same thing.
Oh yeah, dude, that Johnny Gosh case, if no one's heard it, you can seek it out anywhere, but I implore you to check that out. That shit, because it's not just about a missing kid. It starts going into like a deep rabbit hole of crazy shit. The whole Boys Town thing and Larry King in Nebraska, and then how it kind of spirals from there. And like it reminded me too, like the police cover up, kind of similar to the Karen Reed, like how there's so much connection and like the seemingly like lack of giving a fuck all the way up to like the police chief is doing weird shit. Like, yeah, that's one that I was like, whoa, that's fucking pretty intense. Dude, quick side tangent, but related to that, I just saw something, and I don't know, it's hard to judge on like Instagram and shit that comes up, but I saw that Mel Gibson is planning, or he's working on right now, to release a documentary exposing a giant like Hollywood sex trafficking ring, and it's going to be like this big thing. I don't know if it's just like one of these scam like promoted like more, it's more like an ad than an actual post or like a real type thing, but that one definitely raised an eyebrow too, just because of it reminded me of like the subject matter, kind of like what we're talking about, and then thinking about Johnny Gosh and how that gets connected to a bunch of different things. And I feel like in the last 5 years you've seen more things and about Hollywood specifically too kind of come out that's a little disconcerting.
Yeah, if you would have brought that up 5 years ago, I think most people would have laughed you out of the room. But some of the things that have come to light over the last few years, I think most people would have to listen. You know, it's definitely not outside the realm of possibility. And,
yeah,
and
I mean,
craziest...
I feel like Scientology is getting a lot of play right now. It's like, you know, they're not the only game in town, you know, that has like a lot of power and the ability to, you know, cover things up and have some like nefarious shit going on in the background. So yeah,
these underground criminal networks exist everywhere. I'm unfortunately. And the craziest part of the Johnny Gosch story to me was when his mom reported that he came back to visit her as an adult like 20 years later, and people don't believe her. And that was just the final like icing on the cake. This is the craziest story ever.
Yeah, that part too. I'm kind of torn on that myself.
Yeah, same here.
But because it just seems so odd. But she's been adamant like the whole fucking time, and been, and I know there's a weird dynamic between her and her husband too. Like, I want to get into a Johnny Gosch rabbit hole, but even like the Paul Benassi character, and I think there's another gal, how they just got their whole lives were. It seemed like they just got trampled over, and they were just trying to tell the truth, and like trying to, like, what angle do they have in all this to get? Yeah. Anyway,
I mean,
maybe that'd be a fun one to look at.
How could the loss of your kid not psychologically break you? So who knows?
Yeah.
Sorry for the derailment.
No, I mean it ties into the flick too. It's got some overtones in it for sure that made me think of that as well. But I think this kind of loops us back into the crew. They start getting more and more. They're like getting into like Mackey's house and this and that, and then it finally comes to a head with he has to break it out and tell his parents what's going on. And then he has to go apologize, and then it spirals from there. And then when Davey really knows something's fucked up is when he asks Mackey, what's he say? He's like, "Oh yeah, you offered the other day to call your nephew," because he's like, "I saw this kid in your house." He's like, "Oh, that was my nephew Jamie. He was helping me, with this or that." And he's like, "I'll call him right now if you want. We could just take care of this, put this thing to bed right here and now." And then, so when he comes back over later to Davey's house, he's like, "Yeah, you remember when you said that? You want to do that right now?" And that's when he figures out, because he calls the operator after he leaves, and he's like, and he writes down the number, and he called his own house. He's like, "Oh yeah, he's not there." It's like, oh fuck, dude. Yeah. Before I forget, there's a couple other little wink and nods, like 80s nostalgia homage when they're hanging up in the treehouse, kind of maybe midway through the flick. Faraday swipes a bottle of his old man's whiskey, and they're up there and they're kind of talking shop about what their next move is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught this, and it's very quick. I had to pause it and rewind a couple times because I was like, in movies when they put like fictitious or fake like products and shit, or they'll, like in like Pulp Fiction, they have the cigarettes and it's like, red apples, give me a pack of red apples. In this, I noticed, I was like, what does that say? And it says McCrady's whiskey. So that is a nod to John Carpenter's 1982 film, The Thing, with Kurt Russell. His name's R.J. McCrady in The Thing. So this is a fake whiskey. So they put McCrady's whiskey as a nod to 1982's The Thing, which I thought was so cool.
I've never seen it, but our buddy Josh, almost every time that we play golf together or I see him, he brings it up that I need to watch it. So maybe we should put that on our Halloween list or answer list.
That would be a good one. I mean, he's got a lot. Carpenter's got a lot of good ones that would tie in perfectly for the Halloween season. Yeah. If you haven't seen The Thing, it's not a deep cut or anything. It actually was critically panned when it came out. It's one of these films that later on has gotten like more attention, and like it's I think with most horror hounds, a lot of people put it as their number one, or at least in their top 5.
Oh,
like
right.
It's a heavy hitter, man. And it really is. It's great. I think the reason it got overlooked at the time, there's a ton of factors, we can get into it, but it's just one of those things, like it kind of got glossed over. And I think it was part of the time too, with like the satanic panic and all that kind of shit in the 80s. And like, it's like, this is a glorification of like gore and like murder and all this, like it's demonic shit like this. And it's like, no, he's just trying to make a fucking creepy creature fucking movie, that was rad, and it got kind of trampled on. But, Also in that film too, like whiskey plays a prominent role because McCready, I think he drinks J&B Scotch whiskey kind of throughout the movie, and then there's an iconic scene at the end of that movie where he's drinking some whiskey with Keith David. Who plays Childs, who's awesome, the fucking dude, and he's in a bunch of Carpenter flicks too. But the Frank Over the Beans, the stepdad.
I know him.
Yeah,
Oh well.
He's awesome. Yeah, we should do the thing. That would be a good one, perfect for Halloween time. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a fun one. That they kind of pay homage. They did the Star Wars. They got a bad feeling about this. They kind of just, you blink and you miss it. So that brings us to the next day after Davey's gotten in trouble by his parents and shit. It's announced, they've found the Cape May Slayer, and we'd like the arresting officer to come up and it's Mackie. And it's like, oh, okay, how convenient is this? So it's just it's like 50 things that have all added up for the true believer Davey this whole time. Like his friends are kind of lagging on him. They're kind of wavering a little bit. And he's like, okay. And it all kind of coincides with this Cape May Day parade thing. That was kind of off on again because of all these, kids going missing. And dude, I guess we should back up just to one scene. The actual, where it shows the abduction of that one kid. I can't remember what his name is. I don't know if they state his name, but they show an actual, the Cape May Slayer abduct a kid. You know what I'm talking about? In the alley. About midway through.
Yep.
That was another scene that really got me too. Like very creepy, very unsettling. Like they really captured, like with the fog and late at night, this kid like going home, like the sense of like tension. Did this one get you guys too?
Not as much, but yeah, it was a good one for sure.
Yeah. I like that because that's really, until we get to the end, that's really the only time where you see someone in peril, or they're throwing you a bone. They're giving you an example of someone actually being abducted or something happening to them outside of just like conjecture and these guys going along with Davey's plan. So all of them, they're all been in trouble by their parents and shit for falsely accusing Mackie. Now the Slayer's been caught. Everyone's all happy again. They're going to the Cape May Day parade or whatever. And Davey's like, okay, this is my last chance. You guys believe me. Just be my lookouts. I'm going to go into his fucking house. I'm going to go into his basement, into his dark room or whatever. The room that has a fucking lock on it that's super weird that they set up at the very beginning. And I'm going to find out. Of course, Nicky shows up like, I'm going with you, and so he swipes his dad's, because he's the cameraman for the local news station. He's like, I'm going to fucking go in there. I'm going to get evidence, blah, blah, blah. I really like this like setup. Like it was kind of slow, but I feel like it was deserved. Like it pays off. What do you think of this whole kind of like this, not the final act, but like the penultimate act where they fucking go down in his basement?
Yeah, I like the slow build for sure, especially given the payoff at the end. Because even though it seemed so obvious that it was Mackie, I was still kind of waiting for some bizarre alternative explanation that it really would have bummed me out if they're like, oh, actually it's Davey's dad who, is framing Mackie or whatever. Like, God, please don't let it be something so bananas. So
yeah, I like how it took its time to get there, because I feel like the payoff, like when they go down into that room and they start seeing like the pictures, like the Polaroids on the wall, and it's like, like a frightened face, and it's like all these ranges of emotion, and then they pan, and then they see like it's like this kind of it's not an 80s film, but it reminded me of Silence. Have you ever seen Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah.
with Jodie Foster, the very end when she's at Jane Gumm's house and there's that fucking bathtub of that like decomposing fucking body. That kind of reminded me of this, and they pan and the girl fucking screams. It's like half the face is like corroded and eaten through, and then you get a cool jump scare here from the kid who's like bound under like a bed or something, grabs the ankle, and you're like, oh fuck. He's like, help, and like,
well, and there's that moment where they break into the room and it just looks like a kid's bedroom, and they're like, what are we doing? Like, this isn't what you think it is. And then they see the other door, like, oh fuck, actually yes, it's exactly what we thought it was.
Yeah, I really liked all of this. And then they go straight to the police station. They show them the video. Obviously they have this like malnourished, fucked up person too that they have just rescued. And then so then they take off, they descend on Mackie's house. He's not there. And then, the dad apologizes to Davey. He's like, you are a real hero. And like, I'm sorry I didn't believe in you or I didn't trust you and all this shit. And it could have ended, bam, right there. And then that, like my very first watch, it cuts to black, I was like, okay, credits roll. I was like, oh, that's fun. And then, but no, then you like wake up and you see the clock. It's like 12:30 at night. And then it's showing Davey's sleeping. Woody's come over. He's sleeping over. He's on the floor. And this is when you get that iconic fucking, like, it's one of those old school, it's like on the second story, one of those attic, like the ladders that comes down, and it comes down super slow, like a fucking ninja coming down. And then the second row of stairs, and then the soft steps, and sure as shit, it's Mackie. And then he chloroforms him. I think this is a gripe a lot of people have about this, is like the logistics of getting these kids out after he's been hiding in the attic after he's been found out, and he's like, okay, I'm just going to kill these kids, or I'm going to exact my revenge. How the fuck are you getting Woody out of this house, even if he's chloroformed? I guess Mackie's kind of a larger dude, but he's not Arnold. Like, how the fuck is he getting him without waking anyone else up? And it's only midnight.
Well, I mean, he has the benefit of being upstairs rather than downstairs pulling him up. So if he does knock him out, because it doesn't show him knocking Woody out, so he could have taken the first kid down, and then he could have put a knife to this guy and was like, let's go, and then knock him out when he's like a cruiser or whatever.
Yeah, he could have like maybe duct taped his mouth at knife point or something. And okay.
Yeah, it's
I just feel like the audio, like the sound component, like keeping all that quiet would be not only incredibly hard to do, but you'd have to get really like be fortunate and lucky, like hope like these parents are really heavy sleepers, which may be the case because they think everything's behind them now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at this like armchair quarterback, but if all this shit came out and now this guy's missing, I feel like I wouldn't be sleeping super soundly.
No, not at all.
At all. I feel like we're gonna like stay up and drink coffee and fucking like,
or go to a hotel,
kind of talk about this.
Has to have a cop to come like stand outside your door.
Yeah, like especially with all that Davey knows, and knows that like he's got to be onto you in one way or another. Like, yeah, I feel like that's a little unrealistic too. Or yeah, like, let's get the fuck out of Dodge for a few days, but anyway. So then, yeah, this is the unexpected, like it takes this crazy turn, and then all of a sudden they wake up.
Before we get there, can I read bad review number 2?
Oh yeah. No, we skipped that halfway through because we're
right.
Towards the home stretch here.
Number 3 is my favorite, but number 2 is very good also. So this is from Paul D. He also gave it 1 out of 5 stars, and the title of his review is "Why did I pay $1 for this?"
Gross.
And his review is, "Worst movie I've watched in some time. Honestly, not worth the $1 I paid. Not scary, excessive penis and masturbation jokes, and not very 80s-ish. Sure, they make a bunch of 80s references, but most feel tacked on and forced. For as bad as the script and plot are, kudos to the teenagers acting in this. Despite the awful script, they managed to come off as believable. Based on inflation, $1 today would have been 41 cents in 1984. Even that would have still been too much for this movie.
Go fuck, Paul.
You cunt.
Yeah, he's just wrong about a few things there, but I get opinion, but I really like the plot. Like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I feel like they paid homage and like without being right on the nose about stuff. I feel like it captured 80s pretty well. I mean, I wasn't there. I was born in 85, so I don't have the firsthand experience, but it felt pretty. I mean, they even show them. They do the microfiche. They bust out a world book. You know, like feels very analog. I think I agree. All the kids too. I think they all did a great job with. Besides there's a couple gripes I have with Davey, the way he played it, but like just being a smug fucking asshole, like way too like sure of himself. Especially as we go farther down the rabbit hole, I feel like that's not the emotion you would be having. It would be more like tense, more anxiety, like should have been the vibe that he's giving off. But yeah, who gives a fuck about $1? And where did he rent this for $1?
I think Amazon.
Every rental is like $3.99 from Amazon and fucking YouTube. So,
well, maybe he had a coupon.
Coupon. Yeah. And what the correlation between 41 cents like and inflation, it's like where do you get off? Was that an IMDb special or is this an Amazon?
That was an Amazon.
Are you sticking these days purely to the Amazon?
No, not purely,
hellscape?
But it's just a treasure trove of really, really dumb people leaving reviews. So
do you want to hit us with the third one right now, or do you want to wait till we get to the very end?
I'll wait. I'll wait till the end. I think you're gonna like it.
So, cut to after Davey's been chloroformed and maybe Woody. Either way, they're in the back of Mackey's cop car. That's the other thing too. How's he getting out of there in his fucking cop car? Maybe he blends in. I don't know. Anyway, suspension of disbelief for that, I guess. They wake up and it turns out this is like some kind of like dumping ground for him. And they get out and like he's screaming at him. He's like, we're going to play manhunt for real this time. And like, I think Davey like rolls his fucking ankle super nasty and they're trying to run away. Like, so now it turns into like a little cat and mouse game. Like Mackey's trying to have some fun.
He cuts his Achilles at one point.
Oh, fuck. That's right. That's what he does.
Which is
that's brutal.
Brutal injury. Yeah.
I don't know if have you ever seen Hostel?
No.
There's an iconic scene that's really fucking hard to watch of a dude getting his Achilles sliced, and it's very like medical. Like it's like they zoom in on the fucking thing and like you see this guy try to get up and you see like ligaments like fucking pulling and yeah. Reminding me of that too. Which that's a brutal gore porn movie. But so yeah, then they're on the run. They're out. It looks like, you know, you picture like coastal, like forested, like off the highway somewhere in Oregon, Washington. And then there's a part where they like tumble down like this ravine kind of thing. And you see all these like decomposing, like fucked up bodies and like arms sticking out and shit, which that was pretty fucking gnarly. And then, so they freak out and I don't know, they kind of run around for a bit and then it crescendos into,
they discover that, or they think anyway, that they're on an island. So there's only one way in and one way out. So I think that's when they decide to split up. And he's like, hey, fatty, you run that way to go get the cruiser. I'll distract him over here. And that's when he gets his Achilles cut. And then fatty gets, not quite form tackled, but like he gets a forearm shiver and taken down.
Yeah, that's
I did
right.
like that part when he just bodies this 300-pound, 25-year-old kid, no problem.
Playing a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And then something I really did not fucking expect this, but then they both get up to like the where the cop car is, and Mackie jumps up and he gets right behind our boy Woody, who gets fucking his throat slit unceremoniously. I think even before that too, he says something too that I was like, God damn. He's like, I can't die, Davey. My mom needs me, you know?
Yeah.
And then like right after that, he gets his fucking throat slit. And then I think
Guess
a
you
really
can
good
die.
piece of, yeah, and you will. The guy playing Mackie, Rich Summer, this part was really good piece of acting. I felt like when he breaks down to Davey right after he kills Woody, and he's like, yeah, he's screaming in his face like, you took my life from me. All you had to do is just fuck off and let me do my thing. And then how he's like, you know, I want to kill you so bad, but that's too good for you. You're going to live with like me, like thinking I'm right over your shoulder and all this stuff. And yeah. What'd you think about this scene?
I liked it. I like that it didn't have like a happy ending, really. I was surprised. So.
Yeah, but I didn't see this kind of thing coming at all.
No, I was expecting some cutesy little, you know, oh, maybe their friends showed up and Home Alone them.
Like
and
the Nikki character comes back and fucking saves the day, like Deus Ex Machina, fucking just like, yeah, that don't play here. But I mean, it's pretty brutal, like the shit that he says to this kid, like who's somewhere between 14 and 16. I kept trying to think, like, put myself in that kid's shoes, like the guilt of getting your friend killed.
Yeah.
And then having crazy serial killer man out there, and he's got a fucking, he's probably the only thing this guy's going to think about for however many years when he decides to come, barring him not getting caught or anything.
Yeah.
Or dying of natural causes. You're always going to have that in the back of your mind now. Like, God, that's fucking brutal.
Well, and one of the things he said that really stuck with me was, he's like, every day, something to the effect of like, every day of your life, you're going to be looking for me, and one day you're going to be right.
Right, yeah.
That's some dark shit.
And he's doing all this like nose to nose to this kid, and it's like, and you also have the taillights of the car are on. I don't know if he's got like the e-brake down or something, but like you have there's like this red glow like just behind them too. So it's a very sinister kind of like really dark scene when he's like,
yeah, I mean,
laying this out.
You can't go home. You know, he knows where you live, your family lives.
Yeah, and then it just closes with him like back on his paper route. I also like too that they didn't wrap it up with the friends. It seems like they're no longer friends anymore. Like they're kind of doing their own thing. They're all super damaged, like fucked up kids now. They're not going to go back to playing Manhunt and like, yeah, remember when Woody died last year by the serial killer? To me, that felt very real. Like he rides by and he sees Eats and Faraday. Like they talked about, you know, my dad wants us to fucking, you know, he wants to tear this fucking treehouse down. And then you see at the end, like they're carrying out board by board from the backyard and like throwing it in the front yard. So like, and he kind of glances up at him, Davey, on his paper route and doesn't say anything. He's like, ooh, and he fucking keeps riding. And then he has like this monologue going on, like about, you know, even serial killers live next to somebody and all this shit. Like,
well, and I didn't pick up on the treehouse lumber in the front yard. I'd asked the old lady, I was like, what the fuck are they moving? And she's like, it's the treehouse. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
But to push back on what you're saying, I think those dudes probably felt worse than Davey did, because they're the ones who turned their walkie-talkies off, and they decided like,
that's true.
No, this is no big deal. So if anything, they should have felt more guilt.
That's a good point. Yeah, So maybe it's not just like I took it as like, oh, yeah, fuck Davey. Like he got us into all this shit. He got our good friend Woody fucking murdered, this and that. But yeah, they didn't believe him till the very end either. Like they believed in him up to a point, but they didn't fully trust in him. And if they did, maybe things would have turned out differently. So yeah, no one gets out clean in this one, which I feel like, especially the stuff that they're pulling from, like Goonies, Stranger Things, like this kind of stuff, it would have been very easy just to fucking like, yeah, let's wrap it up and make it like happy. But it's like, no, this dude gets his throat slit. Their shit's like, they're not friends anymore, it seems like, and this kid's got to go through the rest of his life like thinking like, is today the day? Like, yeah,
bad guy gets away, love interest moves away.
Yep. Like, yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, how do you like go and seeing that dude's like, this guy was right across the street from him, and there's like police tape up and shit. And like every time you look at that house, like you're gonna think about like the horrific images and shit, and like how he was even creepy enough too to have like all the portraits and the pictures of all the families and the kids that he had killed were up in his fucking house, like he's displaying them. Yeah. Like, dude, that's another level of creep factor too.
Yeah, that was a really cool part where they're like flashing back to the newspaper article and the pictures on his
and
wall.
then to the shit on the wall, like like, oh yeah. Fucking sick fuck. He's displaying the shit openly in his house, like, goddamn. Piece of trivia I thought was interesting. I guess they were going for like an amalgamation of serial killers represented by Mackie. So one is Ted Bundy drove a bug. His like throwaway car that Mackie keeps in a storage unit is that fucking like candy apple green bug.
Yeah. It's gotta be Gacy. It's got to be Gacy.
Gacy's the biggest influence, they said.
Yeah.
And then, but there's one more too. Let me see if I can find it. Oh yeah, okay. He has a police background, just like that of the real life Golden State Killer, the Volkswagen Beetle, and then the most overlap is Mackey's modus operandi as it parallels that of John Wayne Gacy. And then someone pointed this out too that I didn't think about. It's pretty specific, but it says at one point Mackie tells to Davey that when his father moved into the neighborhood 15 years ago, he helped him to move stuff up into the attic. And at the end of the movie, that's where Mackie hides. So he has I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think like, that was his first thought, or like he has intimate knowledge of how to access the attic and like what's up there generally, I guess. But that's not something I thought about either. Someone else said that Mackie also resembles, I don't know if you're familiar with Dean Corll, serial killer who murdered 28 boys and young men in a Houston, Texas area between 1970 and 1973. Corll was known to give out candy to local children. A similar moment occurs in the film when Mackie's Freezy Pop scene. So they kind of winked at that a little bit too.
No, I'm not familiar with this guy, but
yeah, he's not a name that you hear of like Brutus and like John Wayne Gacy and Bundy and all these kinds of guy, or like the East Area rapist. But Dean Corll's got there's a lot of pods out there that have done stuff on him.
Fun synchronicity. Dean Corll, born in your current town.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Damn. That's pretty creepy. I didn't know that. The only thing in this area that I was privy to, what was that one? I think it just got, the guy just got tried. Do you know what that one was in Indiana?
Are you referring to the Delphi murders?
Yes.
Richard Allen. I think that's his name. He has not gone to trial yet.
Oh, okay.
But the state just released. What's that?
everything points to him like pretty clear cut.
Well, it's
The
funny.
recent evidence that came out.
Well, the very recent evidence, yeah, but originally, all they had was an interview that he did with the FBI at the time, where he said he was in the area of the bridge where the two girls, Abby and Libby, I think are their names, where they were found killed. But then his interview was mislabeled by the FBI, so they didn't find it until years later, where they were like, oh shit, this guy was near the area and whatever. So when they arrested the guy, his only link to the crime scene was going back to what we've talked about a million times. Forensic tool mark examination, they found a spent but unfired cartridge at the crime scene that they said matched his gun. It hadn't been fired from it, but they said it matched being cycled through, which is total horseshit, fake, science, not real. But apparently the recent stuff that just came out was they, I don't know if you know this, if you're in jail, but they record all your fucking phone calls, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So they just released court documents that say he confessed to his wife that he killed both the girls no less than 5 separate times over the phone. So, yeah.
And they just missed it?
No, since he's been in jail.
Oh, okay.
So he's fucked, it sounds like. But
yeah,
we'll see. Yeah, so that case went unsolved for 5 years because they missed his interview where he said, like, yeah, I was at the bridge and yeah, I own a jacket that looks like that. And yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's the
Just
FBI
like
for you.
Pure happenstance just enabled this fucking, yeah, that sucks. That's what it takes sometimes. Because then you think how many other things have been mislabeled, or, you know, there's so many, like the chain of custody for like evidence and shit, like how, like just one thing gets misplaced or goes a different way, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just a quick little preview for anybody who's interested in the Idaho 4 murder trial of Brian Koberger. That's not quite as open and shut as people thought at the very beginning. And I think some of that has to do with the FBI fucking the dog.
Like mismanagement? Damn.
So.
That's crazy. Yeah, the brief little bit I saw about it on a Dateline like a while back, it made him look pretty open and shut to me, but
yeah. Well, I mean, that's how it looked to me too when they first released like the probable cause affidavit to arrest him. But but the implication was like, hey, this is what we need to arrest the guy, but we're gonna find a ton more stuff once we arrest him and look at his shit. And now it's like, we haven't really found anything else. So,
damn,
it's going to be interesting. And they're going for the death penalty. So that adds another little wrinkle. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember you talking about like the difference between like the dynamic at trial and like the level that you have to take it to in order to secure the death penalty versus, you know,
I mean, it just raises
life and parole.
Yeah, it raises the stakes quite a bit. So, anyway, not to derail it once again, but
I think we got it for. Do you want to hit us with our? Are we waiting on a third and final?
I got one
shitty
more
review.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is from Kyle. Kyle sucks. 1 out of 5 stars. The title of his review is "Crappy Movie for Hollywood Perverts and Children." Kind of circling back to what we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so his review says, "Vulgar garbage, mostly filled with horny, peeping Tom kids who are somehow supposed to be more clever than the police department while repeatedly being bossed around and dominated by the neighborhood slut. I could overlook the pervasive, in-your-face leftism if it had a good plot, but the story sucks too.
That's so dumb. I mean, they're even promoting like the dad's like he's got like he's all about Reagan. It's like Reagan Bush you see prominently in a yard, and like he's like, yeah, you're screwed, man. This Cold War's never gonna end. Like,
No,
yeah, I didn't catch any of that.
Kyle's just
I will.
dumb.
I will say the Nikki character. I feel like she was fine, but there were a lot of scenes that felt like really artificial.
Yeah,
With her,
I agree.
Like they were trying to like push her as like maybe her not like being into Davey, but liking him and thinking he's a good kid, and like I don't know, like the way she went about it, like when she just walks into his fucking house, and, like grabs a Coke and like like that whole thing was weird, and the age difference too. I was like, used to babysit this kid, but like I'm curious about like how close they are in age. That kind of threw me off a little bit too, but those are kind of minor gripes.
Do you remember the part where so he's 15 and one of his friends is like, she babysits you, and he's like, not for like 3 years or something.
Yeah.
And my thought was like, you had a babysitter at 12?
Yeah.
Or 11 or 10?
Yeah. I can't remember the last babysitter I had. I had to have been like first or second grade maybe. So I think that's like 7-ish, 7 or 8. But yeah, that kind of the age and the time I was a little uncertain about, but cool. So yeah, this is a solid like for old Steve Dog. What's that put us at here?
I liked it a lot.
Sweet. Yeah, I think with our last flick we had got up to an 87 flat, and then that brings us to 87.2. Wow. Yep. Sweet. Okay. So next week, I think loosely we're going to talk about the Titanic conspiracy. Is that what we're running with?
Yes, I think so. And there's actually several conspiracies that need to be discussed.
Word. As it relates to, what's that thing, the Titan?
The Ocean Gate Titan submersible.
Yeah.
That
I'll have to work on I'll have to massage a title, but we'll be talking about that since it's topical, and Steve clued me into a couple conspiracy theories that sound pretty wacky. It might be interesting to talk about. Throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Cool. I don't have any. I don't think there's any new reviews, or let me double check that real quick. No. Okay. We have gotten some good feedback from the last couple episodes ago about the Karen Reed. I think that's just a product of it being pretty topical, but if that, like, seeing that's good that it's getting more attention. Have you heard any updates? Like, has there been any trial dates locked down, or?
No, as far as I know, her next trial date is 20 something. But yeah, I am starting to see a little more attention being paid to it. So
yeah, so that one we'll keep an eye on and maybe come back to at some point. Cool. Any big plans for 4th of July?
Nope.
Do they still do them at the like at the baseball field? Is that like, if you were gonna go, that's the main draw?
No, I think the big place they do it around here is the fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds.
No, I'm gonna stay home to pet our cat. She hates fireworks.
Oh, does it affect her real bad? Does she freak out?
She just hates it. She doesn't freak out too much, but
yeah, I've only had a couple dogs that like really like get affected by it, and one was like this big fat mutt, and I can't remember what the fuck its name was. Roxanne. And then Roxanne, she would just like shiver. Like, I remember being like on my bed or like we'd be out on the couch and we'd like huddle around her, you know, and like have a blanket around her and be like, oh, you got to pet their head, and it's just fucking shaking. It's like, super tensed out. I know some dogs go nuts and bark and stuff, but since then I've gotten pretty lucky. They're just like, it's more like a visual, like their eyes get a little bit bigger and they'll like dart up to the sky, but they're like pretty chill about it. But yeah, I've seen some dogs go fucking ape shit. Right on. Okay. Well, yeah. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, hate mail is welcome. You can reach out to us at waxingtheporpoise.com. Either of our socials, Instagram is at waxingtheporpoise. Twitter is at waxingtheporp. Yeah, we got a couple fun episodes coming up here. I'm excited. Orca is on the horizon. That's one I've been thinking about. I can't wait to talk about that one. That'll be fun. Hoisted a couple, I don't know if you noticed this, got the lighting's shit here, but it's a Narragansett beer. They have a limited edition. This is the dude, Quint in Jaws. That's what he drinks. It's like a local like favorite in like the Rhode Island, like Massachusetts area, kind of like Youngling is out here in the Midwest.
Yeah, I've never
take
seen
a
Jaws.
Dude, the time is now, my friend. It's fun. It's awesome. It's a really cool summertime horror, but it's a Spielberg film too, you know. So it's like it's got that what he brings to like Poltergeist and like E.T. Like it's got a really good story behind it. It's not just like the shark. Huh?
I've never seen E.T.
E.T. is a banger, dude. It really is. I know it's like overhyped and it's like you think about it as this big thing, but it's kind of sneaky Halloween movie. It takes place during Halloween. It's right up there with me like in Christmas time and watching Home Alone. It's like once as we get into like Halloween season, like E.T. is like, especially like a family friendly kind of thing. But it's actually, dude, E.T. gets kind of dark in some spots, man. It's wild. Anyway, that'll do it for us for summer of '84. Another summertime kind of horror, slight horror. I'd say horror adjacent. This is more like a mystery, kind of like thriller and drama, I guess, in some spots. Coming of age kind of deal. Goonies, like maybe a slightly harder edge Goonies. Yeah, check it out. So we'll see you when we see you, and we will see you later.
There's a serial killer on the loose. What else could possibly be this exciting?
Incoming titties.